Welcome back to Real Talk with Brian and Dan on 1150 KKNW. I'm Brian.
And I'm Dan.
Our next guest is Grant Monson with Alterra Advisors. Grant grew up on a working wheat farm in eastern Washington. Today, he credits his family, who still manage the farm, for preparing him to build a business serving others. His vision to lead Alterra is built on relentless dedication to the success of his clients and the team, his extended family. Grant earned a bachelor's degree in business and a master's in economics at Washington State University and is a certified financial planner. He launched his own financial advising practice over a decade ago. An entrepreneurial quest has become one of the most impactful things in Grant's life. He loves coordinating the complex financial lives of families and business owners, bringing a depth of understanding that is rooted in his family's own experience. Welcome to the show, Grant.
Hey, thanks for having me, guys.
Hey, thank you for being here, and tell us a bit about yourself. What do you do for hobbies? What do you do for fun?
Oh, man. So I would say if I sectioned it off, my winter hobby is definitely focused more on skiing.
Nice.
And then when the snow melts, my most recent hobby that I took up this year was mountain biking, and that's been a pretty great quest. And I've realized that if you're going to live in the Northwest, it's something you should really consider. It's a vast playland out there that's
lots of trails.
Where do you like
Absolutely.
to go?
Yeah.
Usually out in the Fall City and Snoqualmie area.
Duthie Hill is out there, right?
Yeah, Duthie Hill's out there, and Raging River, and there's a lot of good stuff out there, and it's pretty amazing.
So tell me, Grant, how does a football team score over 60 points yet still lose a game?
Yeah, inquiring minds.
Sorry, I had to stick that in there, but oh my goodness, I turned off. I watched the show. I came back. I was like, wait a minute, they're going to lose this game. I'm so sorry.
Yeah, no, I got nothing to say there. That is the true definition of couging it.
Couging it. I mean, they are leading the world in couging it. If you need just go back and watch Saturday's game. It might take, I think that was like a 4 or 5 hour game. It was incredible. All right. Enough about giving you a hard time. Sorry about that. So this is a show about homes, and we like to ask about fond memories growing up. So if you could share something you remember from your childhood.
Okay, so I grew up in a metropolis of Dusty, Washington.
Yeah.
Dusty.
This is a junction.
That's the name of the
That's
town?
a real place?
This is a real place.
Dusty?
Oh, wow.
Dusty. This is a real place. So
We thought you were joking. Like
No,
it was Dusty.
no. This is a junction that many of you maybe have driven through, but if you blinked, you'd miss it. There's a couple homes and an old co-op there. And it does live up to its name. It's extremely dirty. There's a lot of dust. It's very dry out there. And so I grew up out there on a farm there. And from my age 11 forward, my family built a house there out on some of the land we farm. And if you haven't been to the Palouse country, you got to go. It's absolutely gorgeous. And one of the things, a fond memory of our house is in the summertime, the sun would set over the hill, and we could be out on the deck. And over there, you don't want to be in the sun in the summertime. It's too hot, and so it creates shade over the deck. You could sit out at the deck after a long day of work, and you could see the sun setting down, settling over the hills. They're bright golden color, and the smell of like harvest and all that stuff. There's nothing like it.
Yeah.
And that's just a fond memory.
That's pretty cool.
That's great.
That's awesome.
So Alterra offers a wide array of financial planning services, wealth management, business and insurance planning, legacy planning, and more. What would you say is the common thread that creates the most value for your clients?
Yes, I would say there's a couple things. One would be beginning with the end in mind. I think that's really important in mapping out and managing one's finances, is knowing where you're going. You wouldn't want to get on a plane and head over to New York today if you knew the pilot had no flight plan.
Right.
Because if they get off even 2 degrees and not make any adjustments, you're going to end up in North Carolina. And so that's the same thing with the finances, is knowing where you're going is a big part of it. And then number 2 would be coordination. One of the big values that I think can often get missed is a lack of coordination amongst your finances. And through our financial planning approaches, we're able to pull together and help coordinate the various functions of a person's financial life, their debt, their real estate, their business, working with professionals like Mike on their tax situation and attorneys on their estate and legacy. And when you move your left hand in finances, it's going to affect the right hand. And so having a professional be able to look at that layout and have experience in planning is going to bring a lot of value and create a much more efficient outcome.
So a lot of people like realtors, right? People know a realtor. Everybody is a realtor. Oh yeah, I've got a friend who's a realtor. That's the same thing in sometimes in financial planning. So how is your philosophy different than some of the other firms out there?
Well, I think a big differentiator is really the approach of helping people align their wealth with their values versus the other way around. And let me give you an example of that. There's actually a case that I'm talking about tomorrow, and it's of a family that runs a manufacturing business, and they had 3 sons. And the 2 sons ran the company with the family, and the 3rd son was a dentist down in California. And and so the desire of the family was to keep the business in the family and make sure that all 3 of the kids were treated equally at the time of the passing of the estate. Pretty standard stuff.
Right.
The attorney did some great work, put a will in place, divided it 3 ways, and everything looks pretty good. Except for they didn't really have good understanding of what the values were in that family. And so that actually was a catastrophe, because when that transferred, they 2 sons who are running the business were now in business with
the other.
You got it.
Right.
It was not well thought out. The professionals did not understand the values of what that family wanted, and didn't create a good strategic plan to make this happen right.
So the parents went in there to get the plan, thinking this could be equitable.
Yep.
Without really kind of understanding, like you said, the end in mind, which would be an equitable situation that allowed the 3rd son to get compensated for their estate, but not be involved in the business that he had no desire or ability to be involved in.
You got it.
Wow,
and
cool.
It makes for a real problem. And so on paper, it looks good. We got this great will. We got these great financial tools, if you will. We're going to put it in place for this family and they'll be fine. But that's not true. And so now you have 2 brothers working all of their life trying to rebuy the company from the 3rd heir back that the family already owned.
Because he has a 33% share in a company, which means he has a say and all that stuff.
So imagine your business, Dan, and I got to take 33% of the profits out of it every year for no contribution.
Wow.
How would you feel?
I would not be happy.
Exactly. So with coordinating the finances, beginning with the end in mind, creating a strategic plan, we're able to take a situation like that to allow the company to stay in the hands of the 2 people that are actually running it, and also make an equitable distribution to the other heir as well.
Gotcha.
Through some different strategies. So it makes a bigger impact, and now the family is not fighting. They stay together and move forward.
Wow. Interesting. So, Grant, what are the top 3 questions a person should ask an advisor when interviewing them?
I say number 1 would be, what services do you provide? So there's a lot of differences in advisors out there, and I really feel for the consumer, because it's very hard to understand.
Because there's a lot of difference between.
There's a huge difference. There's people that are like our firm that's very coordinated, full, comprehensive financial planning approach. And then there's single-focused advisors that just focus on investments or just on insurances or that, and they don't provide planning, but sometimes people think they're getting that. And so it's really important to know what you're asking for. Number 2 is you got to know how do you get paid? How do we pay you? So advisors can be paid for fees for consulting, fees for managing wealth, and they also, depending on their structure, can have commissions from different insurance products or things like that. And there needs to be a lot of transparency and understanding so you know how they're being compensated.
Cool. What about, everybody's talking about how volatile the stock market is today. Talks about a recession. We've had conversations on here where we think things might be headed or not. What should investors be expecting?
So we're late in the market cycle. Market cycles are normal, believe it or not, and I'll even say recessions are normal. So we're late in the market cycle. Things are mature. So we are not in a recession. There's been a lot of stuff in the media about that lately, and that's confusing and misleading right now. A recession is defined as having 2 quarters of negative GDP or gross domestic product.
That's it?
Yep.
2 quarters.
2 quarters, 2 calendar quarters. So
that doesn't feel like a recession, right? If we go back and think about the Great Recession, I guess we can call it that or not. That was many years.
Yes,
or was it?
But
I don't know.
But
I don't know.
yeah. So it can go longer, but it doesn't get
But that's the
defined as that
indicator,
until
you hit 2 quarters, 6
Right.
months of a negative GDP.
negative GDP. So GDP is running around 2% plus right now. We've been almost to 3 last year. So that's not happening. That's misleading. What we did see, though, is we have some indicators, and I would say that you'd be described as headwinds that are going to start maybe pushing
Inverted
back.
yield curve, is that the...
So inverted yield curve, that was a big scare here a couple weeks ago or in mid-August. That's an indicator. That does not mean we're in a recession, but it can be an indicator of something to come. We're seeing corporate profit rates getting lower, so companies aren't producing as much earnings. So again, it's that maturing of the cycle. And there's some issues overseas in Europe and things like that. So we have some headwinds and some risks of building. So I'd say recession risk is rising, but it's definitely we're definitely not there yet.
What's the difference between a downturn and a recession?
A downturn in like the stock market or a downturn in the economy?
Well, I mean, things are talked in boom or recession, right? Isn't there a third in between? I mean, you're either booming or you're busting. Is that really the terminology that we have out there?
Yeah, I actually can't say I know.
Okay.
Interesting.
A downturn would probably lead towards a recession, but I think people say downturn when they see things slowing or sloughing off.
Right, a downturn. So I think about like the real estate market. Let me just use what I know, right? We have either a buyer's market or a seller's market.
Yep.
And then we have a balanced market, right? So do those market conditions exist in the economy?
Yes, definitely.
They're just different.
Yeah, it's just a lot. It's just different. There's a lot more variables.
Yeah, we could go down a long rabbit hole
Yes,
on
we
that.
We could. What is one piece of financial advice you'd give to everyone?
If I had to give one piece of advice that I'd spread across everyone, regardless of their status or economic status, I'd say be aware of the financial information you are getting bombarded with every day in the news media.
Okay.
It is toxic, and it can really cause and generate a lot of fear and stimulate your emotions to make decisions that are not based on good, intelligent planning. And I think it's just really important for people to remember that when you're watching the news, they are not there to intelligently inform you about your situation. They are there to grab your attention so that you'll watch them and get their ratings up. Right. And it's okay. I'm not saying you can't get information there, but it's very emotionally and fear-driven.
Right.
That's great. Tell us how our listeners reach you. How do they get a hold of you?
Best way to reach us would be on our website. That's AlterraAdvisors.com. Again, that's AlterraAdvisors.com. Thank you guys for having me.
Grant, thank you so much for coming in today. Hey, we certainly enjoyed the conversation. You're listening to Real Talk with Brian and Dan at 1150 KKNW. After the break, we have some more Real Talk, and I, of course, have some great final thoughts. We'll be right back.